Every Decepticon is dangerous. That's the baseline, but some of them make Megatron look like a minor inconvenience. Today, I'm ranking every major Decepticon from the bottom of the threat list to the absolute top. And trust me, the final one makes everyone else on this list irrelevant. Megatron. Here's the thing about Megatron. He's the most famous Decepticon ever created, and he might also be the most frequently humiliated villain in science fiction history. His origin is genuinely wild. Megatron's original toy was a Walther P-38 pistol, not inspired by one. Hasbro literally bought the molds from a Japanese manufacturer already making realistic gun toys. The leader of the Decepticons started his existence as a firearm replica sitting on a shelf in Tokyo. On paper, Megatron is terrifying. He's held command across every major Transformers continuity since 1984, over 100 comic series, 8 theatrical films and counting. He's the benchmark every Decepticon on this list gets measured against. But his actual track record? Constant defeats to Optimus Prime, repeated betrayals from his own army, at least 7 distinct rebuild cycles just in the Marvel Comics run alone. The Megatron was right, meme exists in fan communities, and it's not a compliment. He has the ambition and the raw power, but he can never close the deal. He's the foundation of this list. Iconic, dangerous, absolutely formidable. But as we climb higher, you're going to realize Megatron isn't even close to the most terrifying thing wearing a Decepticon badge. Starting with the one bot who's been trying to steal his job since day one, Starscream. Starscream has tried to kill his boss at least 16 times across various continuities. 16. And he failed every single one. That's not incompetence, that's commitment. Here's the thing about Megatron's second in command. He transforms into an F-15 Eagle. He's a genuinely capable air commander, and his personality was directly modeled on Shakespearean villains. Always one clever move away from the throne, always undone by his own hubris at the exact wrong moment. And that's not an exaggeration. Starscream is smart enough to orchestrate a full coup, bold enough to pull the trigger, and then dumb enough to monologue about it before finishing the job. Every single time. But here's where it gets interesting. Despite being treated as completely expendable by his own leader, Starscream survived the first 3 Michael Bay films before finally being killed by Sam Witwicky in Dark of the Moon. A human, not Optimus Prime, not some ancient weapon. A college kid with a boomstick took out Megatron's air commander. That's arguably the most embarrassing death in live-action Decepticon history. The fan argument that Starscream deserved better actually holds weight. He's a capable commander whose entire arc is being perpetually underestimated, and then perpetually proving exactly why he was underestimated. It's tragic, it's hilarious, it's Starscream. But if you think a backstabbing coward is entertaining, wait until you meet the Decepticon who never needed to betray anyone, because he was already listening to everything. Soundwave. After Starscream's constant screaming and scheming, Soundwave hits you like a wall of silence. And that's exactly what makes him terrifying. Soundwave is Megatron's communications officer and intelligence chief. He transforms into a microcassette recorder in G1, later a satellite and tank across other continuities, but the function never changes. Surveillance and information control. He has no official mouth. He rarely speaks. And when he does, it's in this flat, emotionless monotone that makes your skin crawl. But here's what really sets him apart. Soundwave doesn't just gather intel. He deploys 6 to 8 cassette warriors from inside his own chest. Laserbeak, Rumble, Frenzy, Ravage, Ratbat, Buzzsaw. This guy is literally walking around with a full strike team living inside his body. He's not a soldier. He's an entire operation. In IDW Comics, Soundwave is depicted as running computational intelligence networks so vast they potentially rival Megatron's own authority. Nobody talks about that enough. The quiet one in the room might actually be the most powerful piece on the board, and that leads to the franchise's great debate. Is Soundwave's loyalty to Megatron genuine respect for hierarchy, or has he simply calculated that Megatron is the most useful asset to stand behind for now? Nobody knows. That's the point. You can't read someone who has no face and no voice. But if a Decepticon with no emotions is unsettling, wait until you meet one who runs entirely on cold, pure logic. Shockwave. Most Decepticons want something. Power, revenge, recognition, a throne. Shockwave wants none of it. He wants the correct answer. Megatron's military operations commander doesn't transform into a jet or a tank or anything you'd recognize from Earth. He turns into a Cybertronian laser cannon, a weapon that has zero real-world equivalent because Shockwave exists entirely outside human reference points. And that single red optic where his face should be, that's not a design shortcut. It's a a statement. Shockwave doesn't see people. He sees data, probabilities, and outcomes. Here's what makes him genuinely unsettling. When Megatron left Cybertron, Shockwave took command of the entire planet. Other Decepticons, an army built entirely out of ego-driven killers, described him as mighty and awesome. These are beings who respect nobody, and they were uncomfortable around him because Shockwave will commit genocide if the math says it provides a strategic advantage. No hesitation, no regret, no second thoughts. That's not ruthlessness. Ruthlessness implies emotion, implies choosing cruelty. Shockwave doesn't choose anything. He calculates, and whatever the equation outputs, he executes. You can't reason with that. You can't appeal to it. You can't even call it evil, because evil requires intent. Fans have debated for years whether Shockwave would actually be a better leader than Megatron, and honestly, intuition has beaten his logic before. But logic doesn't have a ceiling. It doesn't get frustrated, doesn't get distracted, and it never, ever stops. But if a single emotionless calculator is terrifying, wait until you see what happens when 6 Decepticons merge into one Devastator. Everything up to this point has been one robot, one threat, one problem to solve. Devastator threw that entire concept in the trash. Here's the setup. 6 Constructicons, Scrapper, Hook, Bone Crusher, Long Haul, Mixmaster, and Scavenger are individually fine. Useful soldiers, manageable opponents, nothing that keeps an Autobot commander up at night. But in 1985, those 6 construction vehicles locked together into a 40+ foot Gestalt warrior, and the rules of Cybertronian combat changed forever. Before Devastator, combining wasn't a thing. Nobody had a counter doctrine for it because nobody had ever seen it. You train to fight one robot. You build tactics around one-on-one engagements or squad skirmishes. Then 6 mid-tier Decepticons fuse into something that outclasses top-tier warriors, and every strategy you've ever developed becomes useless overnight. And the power isn't additive, it's exponential. The combined form hits harder than most individual Decepticon lieutenants, which puts Devastator in a threat tier that none of his 6 components could touch alone. That's the terrifying part. 6 average soldiers walk onto a battlefield, and minutes later, something stronger than your best fighter is staring down at you. Devastator was the template. Every combiner that followed, Menasor, Bruticus, Predaking, Abominus, all of them, exists because this concept worked first. 5 Decepticon combiner teams emerged in G1, and every single one traces back to the moment those Constructicons proved that fusion was the ultimate force multiplier. But if a combined form of 6 construction vehicles scares you, wait until you meet the upgraded version of Megatron himself, Galvatron. If Shockwave is cold logic taken to its terrifying extreme, Galvatron is the exact opposite. Pure volatile energy poured into a body that can barely contain it. Here's the backstory. In the 1986 Transformers film, Megatron is left broken and dying after his final battle with Optimus Prime. Unicron, a literal planet-eating god, scoops him up and rebuilds him from scratch. New body, new name, new power. But there's a catch. That power comes with a leash. Galvatron now runs on energy donated by a cosmic horror, and Unicron expects obedience in return. The upgrade is significant. Galvatron stands roughly 35 to 40 feet tall, noticeably larger than Megatron's base form. His arsenal includes electrical bursts and concussive blasts that outclass anything Megatron ever carried. On paper, this is Megatron 2.0 in every way. But here's where it gets tragic. The process that made him stronger also broke something fundamental. Galvatron is volatile, erratic. He'll turn on his own troops mid-battle for no strategic reason. The same instability that makes him terrifying to fight makes him a liability to his own army. And then there's the identity question. The Generation 2 comics deliberately leave it unresolved whether Galvatron is actually Megatron or a completely new entity wearing his memories. He might still have Megatron's tactical genius buried somewhere, or he might have lost it entirely in the rebuild. Fans are split on what this means. Some argue the instability is a fatal weakness. Others argue it is the weapon. You can't predict him, you can't reason with him, you can't negotiate, because Galvatron himself doesn't fully know what he wants next. A god made him stronger and destroyed him in the process. And if you think that's unsettling, wait until you see what happens when 5 Decepticon predators merge into one nightmare. Predaking, 2 years after Devastator showed the world what happens when you combine construction vehicles into one giant robot, the Decepticons Decepticons decided to try something completely different. Instead of bulldozers and cranes, they fused 5 Predators together. Razor Claw, Dive Bomb, Rampage, Tantrum, and Headstrong combine into a 45 to 50 foot gestalt with a lion's head, eagle wings, and the raw crushing power of rhinos, bulls, and big cats forming the limbs. It looks like the result of a biology experiment with zero ethical oversight, and that's exactly what makes Predaking terrifying. Devastator was built on construction logic, brute force, heavy lifting, smashing things into rubble. Predaking was built on hunting instinct. He doesn't charge at you like a wrecking ball. He stalks, adapts, and closes distance like an apex predator cornering wounded prey. IDW Comics depicts him with feline-level intelligence and predatory instincts, which means his unpredictability isn't a malfunction. It's an evolved kill pattern. You can't strategize against something that operates on pure animal cunning. But here's where it gets interesting. Predaking is one of the few combiners where the fusion actually makes the whole smarter, not dumber. 5 animal-based warriors pooling their predatory instincts into a single gestalt mind. He's not just hunting on instinct, he's hunting with coordinated pack intelligence compressed into one body. The weirdest part? Predaking is massively underrepresented in modern Transformers media despite being a G1 fan favorite. But honestly, that works in his favor. The threats you forget about are always the most dangerous when they finally show up. And speaking of threats people underestimate, wait until you hear about the Decepticon who literally rivals Megatron in command authority. Scorponok. Most people skip right past Scorponok in Decepticon rankings. That's a mistake, and I can prove it. First, understand what he actually is. Scorponok is a headmaster, meaning his robot head is a completely separate entity that pilots and activates the larger mechanical body. That body transforms into a 50-foot mechanical scorpion. So you're not fighting one enemy, you're fighting a strategic mind operating a walking siege weapon in real time. 2 levels of threat simultaneously, and he's not some obscure lieutenant. When Megatron and Shockwave were both out of the picture during G1, Scorponok commanded Cybertron's forces. That puts him in direct command succession with the 2 most dangerous Decepticons in history. You don't get handed that position because you look cool, but here's where it gets interesting. His scorpion form isn't cosmetic. The claw cannons, the tail energy blasts, the tank-rated armor plating, all of it creates a completely different threat geometry than a standard humanoid Decepticon. Every Autobot is trained to fight upright robots. Scorponok forces them to throw out the entire playbook. Surveillance capabilities, entrapment tactics, and a low-profile armored frame that shrugs off conventional firepower. He fights like nothing else on the battlefield. The Marvel Comics UK run explicitly states Scorponok rivals Megatron in strategic command capability. That's not a throwaway line. That's putting him on the same tactical tier as the Decepticon founder. His insectoid aesthetic gets him dismissed in casual fan rankings. Nobody takes the Scorpion seriously until the Scorpion is already on top of them. A 50-foot armored predator with Megatron tier strategic thinking is not a mid-tier threat. He's a nightmare that the community consistently underrates. But if a 50-foot Scorpion sounds bad, wait until you see what happens when the Decepticons scale up to city size. Triptychon. Most Decepticons look at Earth vehicles and think, yeah, I'll be a jet. Triptychon looked at the fossil record and said, I'll be the thing that ate everything. He's a triple changer who converts between a 50 to 60 foot mechanical T-Rex, a full-scale city headquarters, and a mobile battle station. Let that sink in. A Cybertronian who could have been anything, any vehicle, any weapon platform, chose Apex Predator as his primary form. That's not a design choice. That's a statement. And here's the thing. Triptychon isn't just a giant dinosaur stomping around for intimidation points. His battle station mode houses entire weapon systems, ammo storage, and interior chambers for troop deployment. He's functionally the Decepticon answer to Metroplex, a walking city that also happens to bite through reinforced armor plating. Destroying Triptychon isn't just a combat problem, it's a logistical nightmare. You're not taking down a warrior, you're dismantling an army's entire supply chain that also has teeth. In the Marvel Comics run, his bite force and sheer bulk are benchmarked against Megatron's durability. That's not a comparison they throw around lightly. Triptychon operates on a completely different scale than tactical fighters or even combiners. He doesn't outthink you. He doesn't need to. He removes the battlefield from under your feet and replaces it with himself. But if Trypticon is overwhelming force without subtlety, the next Decepticon on this list is what happens when raw power comes with a brain that knows exactly how to use it. Overlord. Most Western fans have never heard of this guy, and that's exactly why he's dangerous. Overlord was originally a Japan-exclusive G1 release, which means an entire generation of English-speaking Transformers fans grew up with zero exposure to one of the most powerful Decepticons ever created. That's not an exaggeration. IDW Comics explicitly describes him as one of the most powerful Decepticons in existence. A warrior so devastating that the wounds he inflicts on his opponents literally cannot heal. Let that sink in. You don't recover from fighting Overlord. Here's what makes Overlord different from every other heavy hitter on this list. He's a Power Master, specifically a God Master in the Japanese continuity, formed from two separate vehicles, a jet called Mega Jet and a tank called Giga Tank, each piloted by a human partner, Mega and Giga. Those two vehicles combine into a single massive robot mode. He doesn't pick a battlefield, he adapts to whichever one benefits him most. Air superiority, jet, ground assault, tank, close quarters, a towering robot with arm-mounted photon cannons, plasma grenades, and a sword rated for tank armor penetration. There is no situation Overlord isn't equipped for. That's not an accident. That's engineering. But here's where it gets scary. The anti-healing ability is what truly separates him. You can fight Overlord. You can even land hits. But whatever damage he deals to you stays permanently. Your repair systems fail. Your wounds don't close. He wears opponents down not by overpowering them in a single exchange, but by making every single exchange count forever. That's not brute force, that's methodical, and that's the real argument for why adaptability beats raw power. Raw power has a ceiling, adaptability doesn't. An opponent who cannot predict your form, your approach, or your tactical priority cannot build a reliable counter strategy against you. Period. But if you think a shape-shifting war machine is bad, wait until you meet the Decepticon warlord so powerful he ran his own independent army, Deathsaurus. Here's a name most Western Transformers fans have never heard in their lives. Deathsaurus is a Japan-exclusive G1 character who never made the jump to English-language continuities in any meaningful way, and that's a shame because what's confirmed about him is genuinely wild. He's the Decepticon commander in Transformers. Victory. Not a lieutenant, not a sub-leader waiting for Megatron's orders. He runs the entire operation independently, with his own army and his own agenda. But here's where he breaks the mold. Serving under him is the Breast Force, a 6-member Decepticon team that combines into a gestalt called Leo Kaiser. 6 components: Leozak, Skyhawk, Hellbat, Jaguar, Kill Bison, and Drillhorn. That's a full combiner squad operating as Deathsaurus' personal strike force. Most Decepticon leaders command grunts. Deathsaurus commands a combiner team, like it's just another asset in his arsenal. But the command structure isn't even the scary part. In Japanese G1 continuity, Deathsaurus doesn't serve under Megatron. He commands independent operations at near equal authority. That's not a subordinate. That's a parallel power structure. A political rival who also happens to have a living fortress and a combiner team on speed dial. And his signature weapon, the living metal destroying cannon, is rated for planet surface destruction at close range. Not blow up a building, not level a city block, alter the geography of a planet. Now, I want to be honest, English language sources on Deathsaurus are thin. Most of what we know comes from Japanese toy documentation and fan translations. But what is confirmed puts him right at the ceiling of what a Decepticon commander can physically be. He's the last entry on this list that's still playing by the rules of combat, because the next one doesn't play by any rules at all. Unicron. Every single entry on this list has a motive. Megatron wants control. Starscream wants power. Shockwave wants efficiency. Even Devastator, a barely conscious gestalt of construction vehicles, wants to destroy whatever's in front of him. They all have a reason to fight. Unicron doesn't. His first on-screen act in the 1986 film isn't an attack, it's a meal. He consumes the planet Lythone, not destroys it, not bombards it, eats it, the way you'd eat breakfast, and then he moves on to the next world because that's what he does. That's all he does. Later in the film, he devours Cybertron's moons like appetizers, just to prove the first time wasn't a fluke. Let me put the scale in perspective. Unicron's body is planetary. He transforms from an entire world into a robot form. The numbers are almost meaningless at that point because your brain physically cannot process what a planet-sized mass of living metal looks like standing upright. But the 1986 film doesn't need you to do math. It shows you. He tells entire civilizations he will consume them, and then he immediately proves he means it. No bluffing, no posturing, just follow through on a cosmic scale. And here's the thing that separates Unicron from literally everything else on this list. He's not a villain, he's not a conqueror, he's not even really a character in the traditional sense. He is entropy with a face, a force of consumption that exists because destruction is what he is, not what he chooses. Every other Decepticon is a tactical problem. You can outfight them, outthink them, outmaneuver them. Unicron is a philosophical problem. How do you defeat something that doesn't want anything? Something that simply consumes because consuming is its nature. The honest answer, after 40 plus years of Transformers media spanning the original film, TV series, comics, video games, and the live-action franchise, is that it depends entirely on which continuity you're asking about. The 1986 version 8 planets whole. Later versions vary. Some got nerfed, some didn't, and fans have debated this for decades without resolution, which is itself the point. Unicron isn't a ranking entry. He's the reason rankings exist. Every Decepticon before him on this list fights for something. Unicron just consumes. And when the universe finally goes quiet, he'll be the last thing left, still hungry. If you enjoyed this video and want to see more, click the video on the screen now.